And speaking of conservative heroes, the Koch brothers bought a table here tonight, but as usual, they used a shadowy right-wing organization as a front. Hello, Fox News.
Charles and David Koch, who have helped fund efforts across the country to stymie solar power, to repeal renewable energy mandates, to foster climate change denialists, even to get members of Congress to promise to vote against climate change legislation unless it is linked to tax cuts. Those brothers are from Kansas. Kansas is Koch country. Wichita is the home and headquarters of Koch Industries, the $100 billion oil and industrial company that provides the Koch brothers with much of their $80 billion fortune. The brothers helped finance the 2012 overthrow of Republican moderates in the Kansas legislature in what one ousted Republican deemed an effort to use their home state as a laboratory for their ideas, turning it into what he called an ultra-conservative utopia. Koch Industries has been one of the biggest contributors to Kansas Governor Sam Brownback and one of the biggest contributors to Congressman Mike Pompeo.
With respect to climate change, I've read countless studies, and they disagree.
And one of the biggest contributors to Senator Jerry Moran, who recently read out a Koch brother op-ed on the floor of the United States Senate.
This is an opinion piece from today's Wall Street Journal, written by a Kansan, Charles Koch.
The Koch brothers have been fighting renewable energy everywhere across the country, from Oklahoma to North Carolina to Ohio to Arizona. The fight has been particularly toxic in Kansas, against the state's renewable portfolio standard, which requires utility companies to get 20% of their energy from renewable sources by 2020. The Koch-funded Americans for Prosperity has spent $300,000 on a campaign against that Kansas law.
Before Kathleen Sebelius went to Washington to overtake our healthcare system, she proposed a mandate that would limit the sources of Kansas electricity.
The director of AFP Kansas just admitted to helping set up a group that sent out postcards to Kansans saying that green energy makes their electric bills go up. And state activists say AFP and their allies have tried 6 times just this year to repeal the renewable energy mandates in the Kansas legislature. So why is the fight against green energy so important in Kansas? Could it possibly have anything to do with the fact that, if you want to see some of the best examples of benefits of renewable energy, you need look no further than the Koch brothers' own backyard?
We hope that those of you who are in Greensburg will remain in your shelters. A tornado emergency declared by the National Weather Service.
The night of May 4th, 2007, a massive tornado, more than 1.5 miles wide, tore through the tiny western Kansas town of Greensburg. 11 people died. Greensburg was utterly destroyed, 95% of it erased. But when it came time to rebuild, the city decided to embrace the same force of nature that leveled it.
100% of the consumption of the city of Greensburg is from alternative energy, the wind. Not only is it the wind that destroyed our community, it's the wind now that's generating electricity for our community.
Not only is the city now powered by wind, townhouses are energy efficient, City Hall has solar panels and geothermal heating, and the school, the hospital, even the local John Deere building are LEED certified. The mayor of Greensburg says going green made sense to him as a Republican.
As we thought about the process of talking about, quote, being green since we were Greensburg, your first impression in rural America was, oh, that is something that is political. That's left-wing, that's New Age, that's secular stuff. When in fact it's not. It's not an issue of whether it's Democrat or Republican or up or down or right or left. It's about our issue to leave legacy for future generations.
And the group behind the greening of Greensburg says the city's success stands as a real-world rebuttal to the Koch brothers' arguments against green energy.
I think the reason the Renewable Portfolio Standard bill was defeated was Greensburg, because Greensburg has been a model of what can happen when you embrace these new technologies.
But it's not just tiny cities like Greensburg that are embracing renewable energy. It's happening on ranches across the state.
We're standing on the highest point in the Flint Hills. Great place for a wind farm. Wind blows here all the time. If you'll notice over there, those trees are actually leaning. They've never had a windless day in their lives.
Pete Farrell's family has been on this land raising cattle since 1888. But over the past couple of years, Kansas has seen a severe drought. Fortunately, Pete Farrell is raising more than just bison and cattle on his ranch right now.
Wind is my most drought-resilient crop. The wind blows even during a drought, even when I can't have livestock on the ranch.
Half of the wind turbines from the nearby Elk River Wind Farm are on the Farrell Ranch.
I've heard as high as 60,000 homes being serviced by this wind farm, basically because of the quality of the wind. It tends to blow here all the time.
Like many ranches in Kansas, Farrell Ranch has some oil production, which provides the family with some secondary revenue. But it takes a toll.
But this is just one of 100 leaks that has happened on this oil field since it was put in years ago. Once you bring that oil to the ground, up out of the ground, it's going to spill somewhere. And this grass will never be the same. The tragedy is that this just keeps occurring over and over and over. And every oil field in America has this going on right now.
Which is part of the reason Farrell Ranch has embraced the Kansas wind.
The grass and the wind are inexhaustible. Again, if treated properly, we can be doing this centuries from now. So the hallmark of this landscape is sustainability. We can keep doing this and not deplete the biological capital of this place.
Wind energy is a $2 billion industry and employs thousands of people in Kansas, which is what makes the Koch brothers' stance so baffling to those who harness it.
There's some very powerful people that have tried to repeal the renewable portfolio standard. Those individuals are deeply entrenched in petroleum and petrochemicals and all sorts of things that I guess they want to protect, because I can only imagine why they have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to defeat something that is so incredibly logical, especially here in Kansas, where we have an abundance of wind.
And that is why, despite a valiant effort involving thousands of dollars from the Koch-funded AFP, efforts to repeal the renewable energy standards keep failing in the Kansas legislature. As a representative leading repeal efforts in the State House describes it,
there are a number of our Republican members that are Western Kansas based and right in the middle of the wind farm development territory. So, you know, they would have reasons to want to protect that.
It's not just Republicans in the House who are willing to go up against such powerful interests. Even Governor Brownback, a man who has been supported almost his entire career by the Koch brothers, strongly supports wind energy.
Now is the time to buy Kansas wind. And I hope you will join me in saying to the rest of the country, now's the time to buy Kansas wind.
Now, just because they haven't succeeded yet doesn't necessarily mean the Koch brothers aren't going to keep tilting at those wind turbines.
Well, the Koch brothers are involved in the oil industry, and they look at wind as being a direct competitor to them. So, yeah, I have no doubt they'll be engaged in these upcoming House elections, and they'll try to elect, you know, more conservative House members who will then vote to repeal the RPS.
But so far, one of the most conservative legislatures in the country keeps rejecting efforts to kill renewable energy mandates. And the Koch brothers-backed governor keeps supporting wind farms. And the efforts of the Koch-funded Americans for Prosperity and their allies in the Kansas Chamber of Commerce and the American Legislative Exchange Council keep coming up short.
I think they wanted to make an example of Kansas and try to defeat wind here and then defeat it in other states.
Because what is happening in Kansas is the fossil fuel industry's worst nightmare. That once alternative energy gets its foot firmly in the door, it will be impossible to ever get it out.